Hi friends, just a quick announcement to talk about where you should be this week. So everyone has finished taking the first chapter test over your basics of sine, cosine, and tangent, those common ratios for those using from the perspective of a right triangle, right? So we've learned how to get those values from the right triangle and hopefully a quick way to put them into a chart to make them useful so you don't have to have them all completely memorized. And then some applications is how that ended in chapter 1. Now you've taken your test. I picked most tests up on Thursday early. So if you took your test later on Thursday, I don't have it in my hands yet. I plan to have those graded within the next day or two. You'll see your grade go into the grade book. And when you do, if you would like to get a copy of your test back after it's been graded, I just need you to send me an email and then I will scan the test and attach it and return it to that email that you send. I can't do that in Canvas. Canvas, if I email you through Canvas, which is where I have all of your email addresses, it won't let me send attachments. So if I don't care if you use your school, whatever email you want me to send it to, but I need you to initiate that so that I can use my regular email account to attach the test and send it back. If I don't hear from you, then you won't get it. A test that back, but I'm happy to do that for you. I highly encourage you to see your graded test so that you know what you missed and can learn from it and take that forward on your next exams. So chapter 1 is done. How did it go for you? Do you feel like you were prepared or were you surprised about anything that was on that test? If so, if you feel like you weren't prepared, then I would question whether or not I would ask you to consider whether or not you worked through the review. I do provide you a review. It does help you sort of see what it looks like on the test, since it's entirely possible to game computer system homeworks, right? That's not how we want you to use them, but if you really wanted to, you could just use all the help me solve this and turn all your homework in, but you're not actually learning how it works. And so the paper pencil reviews and really any homework you can turn into a paper pencil practice that's helpful. All homeworks can be printed out in Canvas. If you're not sure how to do that, or in my math lab, if you're not sure how to do that, I'm sure could Google printing out homework in my math lab and something will come up to show you how to do that if that sounds beneficial to you. So chapter 1 test, you're already into chapter 2, right? And in chapter 2, it's also a short chapter. You're gonna see your next exam is the week after spring break. So you started it last week, chapter 2, and then you're going to finish it this week. Chapter 2 could be broken into 2 parts. It's all about radians, and the first few sections, the first 3 sections, are kind of doing the same things we did in chapter 1, but with radians instead of degrees. Radians is what goes forward with you into calculus. If you're taking calculus, we don't really use degrees in calculus. So if this is the first time you're ever seeing radians, you're going to want to make sure you take the time to understand exactly what that is and where they come from. You're also going to be introduced to the unit circle this past week. That is something, that's another tool like the chart that helps you draw those special angles in degrees 0, 30, 45, 60, and 90, but in radians too. Throughout the entire circle. So quadrant 1 is super helpful. Quadrant 1 gets you almost everything, but when you use the unit circle, you have all 4 all 4 quadrants, that's the word. All 4 quadrants listed out. And going forward beyond chapter 2, then when you have questions like that you're doing without a calculator, it would be your choice, your preference of, do you prefer the chart that I showed you in chapter 1? Do you prefer the unit circle? They both have their advantages and disadvantages. And then you would use that on any subsequent chapter that uses trigonometry and into calculus, right? You're gonna want some tool that you can use regardless of what instructor you have and what they're gonna expect, that you have access to the information about the sine of pi over 6, the cosine of pi over 4, like all of those values easily. So That's the first half of chapter 2, sort of introduces you to radians and what that looks like on the unit circle. And the second half of chapter 2 is graphing trig functions. Now, especially you that are online, right? In my in-person classes, I will pass out practice worksheets where you're graphing things by hand. You're going to want to practice by hand. Your homework in my math lab is definitely limited because it's a computerized system. You're not actually physically having to do it. So you'll notice in module 2 that there are some worksheets that you can print out. I've also included the keys. So I would encourage you to print those out and practice the graphing, look at the key. And if you're having trouble and you want to contact me to get more help with that, then for sure let me know. So that's chapter 2. Then you have all of spring break, and ideally, like, spring break is truly a break, but you can use that to your advantage to continue to study or work through the chapter 2, review through spring break. So you kind of have an extra week built in if you want to use it for that. And then immediately when you come back from spring break, that Monday through Thursday, there's no Saturday hours this time because everybody's on spring break. So Monday through Thursday is the next testing window. I would encourage you this week to get in and make that exam. Again, there's a part 1 and a part 2. This time, the non-calculator part is the bulk of the test. The calculator part is just 1 page. And the calculator part is going to consist mostly of the application, the stuff from 2.3. Pretty much everything else is non-calculator, right? I don't want you to have the graphing feature to be able to graph the questions I'm going to give you. I need to see that you know how to graph it. So just be prepared for that as you are working through the homework. All right, I am going to put out another video sometimes towards the end of this week. So you've had some time to look at the unit circle and see those, how radians work. Your goal is to be able to recreate that unit circle by hand. That is the first page of the non-calculator part of your test. You have a big blank unit circle and you just fill the whole thing out. Again, if you were in my in-person class, I would be giving you blank unit circles to practice building from memory on your own. And again, it's not an issue of having to memorize everything individually. It's sort of you're picking up on the patterns. So maybe towards the end of this week, I will put a video out that sort of gives you some help in how to see those patterns as you create the unit circle and use them. Like I said, the unit circle has some advantages and some disadvantages from the chart. And in the future, you get to choose which one you prefer. But until you really try to put your own hands on it and figure it out for yourself, you want to do that before I kind of help you see some other patterns, because otherwise you're not going to see those patterns for yourself. You're just going to hear me say it and you're like, I don't get it. What's the big deal about that? But if you've worked with it and played with it, then I think that might be helpful to you. So I think that's all I have to say for now. This is longer than I thought it was going to be. Sorry about that. But there you go. Let me know if you have any questions.